So for me, I had a lot of guilt about not doing what I needed to do to go see him. And the documentary was my eulogy for George Romero. I just poured everything that I idolize about that man and the respect that I have for him. And it was sort of like, it was like a catharsis.
Yeah.
You know, to me, like, he's the one, he is the individual whose films and his interviews and everything that I've ever read and seen about the man, it inspired me above all else to pursue filmmaking as a career. And it was like, what better way to start a film career than honor that person and just do something out of love.
Fair warning, this show contains strong language and adult themes from time to time. Sorry, Jerry can't help it.
Sick Boy Wolfgang Productions presents The Offering with Jerry Horror. A deep dive into the history of film and its filmmakers. Mostly horror, always genre.
Some of the greatest stories in all of horror are the ones that never get told. That is, until today's guest, Brandon Salisbury, unearthed something huge. George A. Romero's Resident Evil. And guess what, folks? He's here today, and we're going to talk all about it. We've got a whole bunch of topics. Not only that, we're going to share some of our favorite physical media recommendations. This is a can't-miss episode. I'm glad you pulled up to check it out. Oh, and the cherry on top? It's what's to come. He's working on a video game adaptation that is going to blow your mind. And in my humble opinion, it might just be the next big thing in cinema. So strap in, pull up, tap in, get ready. This is The Offering.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
George's films literally changed the face of horror as we know it.
Capcom didn't hide the fact that the games were inspired directly by George Romero's films.
At that time, there was nothing more I wanted than a live-action Resident Evil movie.
And George is making Resident Evil.
And then suddenly, the plug was pulled on this.
Having him involved would have had the potential for him to leave a blueprint. How did we not get this?
You can tell he had misgivings about doing the zombie project with someone else.
This film just feels so much more gory, so much more violent, and so much more angry.
I think George really took things to the next level on that.
This guy knew Resident Evil.
He would not sell his soul just to get a film done.
I think that they're buying you.
The Resident Evil series exists because of him.
He'll never be forgotten.
Remember, he wrote, "When there's no room in hell, I'll see you in Pittsburgh."
George A. Romero's Resident Evil.
Everyone's gonna die!
Ladies and gentlemen, friends beyond the binary, it is me, your host, Jerry Horror. And once again, you have tapped in, pulled up, and tuned in to The Offering. First, let me just say this. I have a fantastic guest with me today. We're going to get into all kinds of trouble, all kinds of mayhem, if you will. Maybe not, probably not. I'm overselling it. It is what it is. But look, we've got bills to pay too. So there's going to be 100 naked dancing girls as well by the end of the show. Probably not. First, let me just say this. Our guest today is Brandon Salisbury. And I want to just get this right off the bat. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. And I thank you. That's all I can say.
I appreciate it. Feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah. I mean, it is, you know. I did a little research about you. This is going to be like a game show. It's like an intervention. People just come in. They're like, "Oh, who's Brendan? This is your third grade teacher." No, we're not going to do that. This is your life, which is a really dated reference. I've just lost all the Gen Alpha. They're like, "What the f is he talking about?" Long story short, it said on the internets that you discovered watching horror films with your mom.
Yeah. Yeah, it was around 5 years old. I remember her having this, like, can't remember if it was a crate or a cardboard box, but it was filled to the brim with horror movies. There was a few other non-horror, but I remember this would have been like 89, I guess, around about. And it was all like the classic VHS covers. The Fog, Night of the Living Dead, Alice, Sweet Alice. There's a bunch of them in there. So I kind of had like a good upbringing in like the classics. And then my father, he didn't like horror films. So my mother bonded with me through horror. So we would watch all these different horror movies together. And she introduced me to Freddy Krueger, and then eventually I was watching Hellraiser and Friday the 13th. And, you know, it kind of went along over the years, and then eventually got into Alien. And so I got to see all these different movies. And of course, I'm old enough to remember video stores with VHS tapes in them. So I go back there, and my mother could just leave me in the horror section. Yeah. And I would just stare at all the covers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It was great. It was a great time.
It's funny how moms are like that. Both of my parents like genre films, but my mom was more of the horror fan. And I would beg her, I would be like, "Mom, Freddy's Dead's coming out. It's going to be the last ever Nightmare on Elm Street ever made. And can I please skip school? And can you take me to see it?" And she'd be like, "Yeah, we're going to see it." I feel, and that's how I feel it is. We always talk about it, like, women love horror. They, you know, it's like Bela Lugosi and Ed Wood when he says, you know, if you want to make out with a girl, bring her to a horror movie. Show her Dracula, you know?
Yeah. I don't know how my mother got into horror films. I never did ask her. I should probably ask her. But yeah, it was just really amazing to have someone who was supportive like that. And, you know, we could always watch scary movies together.
Yeah, I think it's something simple to, you know, to bond on, and it becomes kind of this shared experience. And that's really what films are. You know, a lot of times I'm checking movies out by myself, but there's nothing like seeing a comedy in theaters and laughing with other people. You know, recently saw Jackass, and it was so lovely just to laugh with people. You know, it felt good. It felt communal. And when a movie is really powerful, you get that communal experience. You know, it's like some people find that in church, some people find that in nature, but I do find that there is something very spiritual about being in a theater, dark theater with a bunch of people, and just witnessing this light on the screen.
Yeah.
So my big question here, this is usually how we start out every interview. And you don't even have to be a kid. You could have been a teenager. You could have been 30. It doesn't matter. What was the movie that you saw and you said, "I think I can do that. I think I want to do that"? I mean, like, what was the film, the movie that really got your fires brimming?
Dawn of the Dead. Without a doubt. I remember the night when I realized I wanted to make movies, and it was something that was kind of on my mind for years. I was watching, like, HBO First Look. They would have those on HBO about upcoming movies. I even still have some on VHS. I had like all these different making of specials and stuff on special effects and the making of Jurassic Park. So I was watching this stuff since I was a kid, just learning the art and like the craft of how these people make movies. But it was it was summer of 2000. I was watching a combination of the 1978 Dawn of the Dead and the 1990 remake of Night of the Living Dead. And come morning, I just went, I think I want to be a movie director. And after that, I just started studying. And because I had access to the internet, I go over to my brother's house and I would like waste all his paper and ink printing off like unproduced screenplays like Freddy versus Jason. I had one of those drafts, Alien versus Predator, one of the drafts of Alien 3, and like a bunch of other House on Haunted Hill, and just started reading screenplays. And then eventually I got to read George Romero's Resident Evil, and started understanding how exactly you make movies for no money. And I do want to mention this, and I always try and mention it as much as possible. There was a website back then called the Horror Screenwriters page, and it was actually ran by one of the zombies that was in George Romero's Dawn of the Dead. And he would link all these different interviews and resources, and it was a really great website at the time. Really opened up my mind with the possibilities and understanding, and getting to read interviews from all these established directors. And I remember when I finally started going out to conventions and getting more connected in the community, I had asked around, like, whatever happened to him, because his website went down, and then I found out he tragically passed away. So I think it was his daughter was in the community. So when I was talking about it, I said, I really wanted to say that his website meant a lot to me, and it really did a lot for when I was really starting out trying to understand how to make movies, and I really wanted to thank him for that. I remember her saying that he would have really appreciated hearing that.
Well, it's funny because, now being older, I'm able to look back, especially at all these different directors. And George A. Romero was probably the most punk rock of all the horror maestros. I would say Tobe Hooper would be a close second. Both of them flirted with big budget Hollywood, Poltergeist, Land of the Dead, where they were like, they liked it, but they didn't like it because they would lose control and the unions and this and that. And I think they found artistic limitations within the studio system. Yeah. So it's guys like George that were cut from that cloth. They just don't exist anymore, and we try to carry on the message of, him as a filmmaker, as a creator. But it's crazy because I had the same shared experience with the internet. And this is what the internet was originally for. It built bridges because I grew up watching those same making of specials. They were like rare air when you would catch one, like the making of Star Wars. You're like, oh my God. And then this portal opens up and it's like, oh, I can read the original screenplay for Hellraiser 3. Like, okay, I'm going to look at this. And it really opened up the world of filmmaking because, a lot of people we talk to, they come from small towns. They're not living in Los Angeles. They're not living in Manhattan. They're from a small town, and Hollywood seems like a million miles away. Like when I was a kid, I went to Universal Studios, and that was like the closest. I was like, wow, this is how they make the magic.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, that was one of the things that kind of really made me flock to George Romero, was the fact that he was making movies in my state. I could watch a movie and I knew that was filmed in my state. And it was a shame that I didn't get to meet him, but I did start getting to go to some of the locations that still exist. And it is quite the experience to walk into a location. And because, I'm a huge fan of Alien, but I can't go and walk on the set of Nostromo. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. But I can go to the Monroeville Mall where they filmed Dawn of the Dead, at least for now, until it gets torn down. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can go there, and I can go to the cemetery from Night of the Living Dead. And it's very surreal to stand in a place where a movie that I've watched countless times in my life, and I'm there, and it's creepy, surreal, and exciting at the same time.
Oh, absolutely. Because You know, a lot of us, we grew up with those VHS and we've memorized every corridor. And you look at it and, you know, this is what we talk about when they shoot in the volume now. It's like the volume can be cool and it can be used sparingly when it needs to be, but physical locations live, breathe. They're this microcosm. And especially with the Monroeville Mall, it has become this hub of fandom, of culture, of people who just love movies. And they love George Romero, and it's kind of like Mecca. It's like you have to make your, you know, you got to go there and pay your respects, because that's it. It sucks, man. You know, like I love physical locations, and you know, it's just like I watched this trailer for Doomsday, and I'm like, you know, I like all the Marvel stuff, but I'm like, man, this feels really toothless because it's just a bunch of dudes on a green screen, and you know. Could you imagine, like, if we saw a movie and, like, Thor came to your town and you're like, oh, my God, that's the auto shop where my dad goes and there's Thor. But it's not like that.
No, and it's a shame that a lot of movies have done that in order to cut costs, you know, and that's something that I've talked about with people that don't necessarily know everything about filming, but it makes sense, you know, because movies were taking months. Remember, like, Lord of the Rings took like 18 months to film. And that's insane to think 18 months of just being, but it shows in the film when they're, you know, going through the Shire and it's a real place. And I can understand that doing something like that where it's not just paying the actors, but you have all the lodging, the food, you know, they always have all these caterers and they have the cast and crew, and it's always hundreds of people. And you have to figure out how you're going to do the logistics for that. And I can understand why they try and cut down on the amount of physical days that they're going to be on set, but you also kind of lose that movie magic. And that's something where my film partner and I, we like film everything together. We have all these discussions about even just moving from the look of film to all digital. And for us, like, digital filming looks flat. I mean, we have to shoot digital because it's just not practical to shoot film anymore. But we do try and make our post-production process get it closer to how film would feel. Because, you know, the film grain, that adds such weight to the image. And when I see just all digital where everything is squeaky clean and perfect, and it looks so weird to me to see, you know, 4K films that are just perfect.
Yeah, I love Arrow. I love a lot of these you know, small little publishers that are out there, and like nothing gets my gears going when I'm like, oh, look at the grain. I'm like, you know, and then when you watch something like, I hate to say it again, but like True Lies, where, you know, that's Disney, that's Cameron, and it's the digital smoothing, and there's been AI manipulation, and you lose, because look, the reality of it is when you shoot people on 35 millimeter, it is sexy as fuck. It makes them look like a god.
Yeah.
When you shoot people on digital, it's kind of like, this is like one step above porn, one step below porn, you know, like it just doesn't look the same. And seeing these films lovingly preserved is really kind of, a lot of us have become, you know, the arbiters. We've become the caretakers of these things. And that's kind of what this show has always been about, is passing the flame, passing the ideas that we learn from these people. I'm going to switch gears really quick, though.
Okay.
Really quick. I'm sorry. When I was a kid, I remember PlayStation had just come out. And I played a game called Resident Evil. And it blew my fucking mind. Because I was like, wait, video games can do this? This is not Zelda. This is not Super Mario. This is beyond. I'm in a horror movie.
Yeah.
And it was one of those moments where it was just like, you know, it was like living in 2D, going to 3D and saying there's this immersive world with puzzles and problem solving. And then there's a live action prologue. and you're like, oh my God, this is so big compared to what we got. You know, when you were a kid, what was the effect? Did you play some of those early games?
Oh yeah, I grew up with I think one of the first games I ever played was Super Mario Brothers on the NES. And then I did not know about Resident Evil until I got a PlayStation. I was getting jealous because a lot of my friends had had their PlayStation for a year and a half. So I got my PlayStation December 1997, opened it Christmas Day, and that's when the campaign started for Resident Evil 2. So I'm watching on TV, and they're showing this horror movie in game form.
Yep.
And seeing the monsters, and I'm like, that looks like everything that I grew up watching as a younger kid, and immediately played it when it came out. And I fell in love with Resident Evil 2. And then as soon as I beat that, I was terrible at the game, but I learned to master the game. And as soon as I did that, went back and played Resident Evil 1. And I've been hooked ever since. And I mean, 1998, I bought the games, I had the comic books, the novels, I bought the toys.
Yep.
I had everything imaginable for Resident Evil. And I've never stopped. I still have like a bunch of Resident Evil stuff.
It felt like the first time a lot of us, we grew up watching horror movies, and now we are a part of the horror movie. We're in it. We're you know, like experiencing it in a way that is fully tangible, and you're making decisions that may or may not cost you your life or the lives of others. And I've been a big fan, and I think, again, I guess we'll get to it. I watched your film the other night, you know, George Romero's Resident Evil. I really liked it. It was really good.
Thank you.
I gave it 5 stars on the Fandango. I bought it, and the reality of it is just like, God damn, we grew up in that era of, like, we'll go back to Freddy vs. Jason, where it was in development hell.
Mm-hmm.
And there was the bubblings on the early internet, like, Romero is going to do Resident Evil. And it blew my mind. I'm like, holy shit, this is happening. I'm like, the best to ever do it is going to come back, and now he's going to show you why he's the master.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was the Resident Evil games, and then the announcement that George was going to make the movie is what got me to go back into watching George Romero films, because when I saw Night of the Living Dead as a kid, it scared the hell out of me.
Oh,
I did not touch that thing for a good 8 or 9 years. I did not watch anything George Romero, and he always had his name above his movies. It was George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead, George A. Romero's Martin. And when I seen that name, that was pure terror to me. And I did not watch anything else because Night of the Living Dead scared the shit out of me. Just completely. So when I saw that George Romero was going to make Resident Evil, I was like, well, I gotta go back and watch these other movies. And thankfully, like, 1998 was the 20th anniversary of Dawn, so they were playing that on one of the premium channels. So I got to buy that, or got to watch it and then record it on VHS. They were showing, one of the other channels was showing Night 90, because, you know, they probably didn't get the rights to Dawn, so they had that in their catalog. And then I just started watching everything I could. And I wanted to try and visualize, based on his films, what a Resident Evil movie could be like. And I was really fascinated by the subtext in his film and just that, like, grungy blue collar feel that his films had. And I think George has been labeled before that he's like a working man's director. He's a blue collar director. You know, he's not artsy. He kind of just goes in, gets everything that he needs. I think he called it the cover your ass method of filming, which, you know, I've kind of adopted myself, of like, we'll do the cover your ass method. Just shoot everything that you possibly can, so you always have footage. And I found not only his films fascinating, but I found that laid back demeanor that he had when he would talk in interviews. He was very frank, very knowledgeable, but he wasn't there like he wasn't trying to give a thesis.
No.
It wasn't about like art. It was like, yeah, we do these gags and this is how we did it. And, it was a really cool thing that we shot, but it was never, he didn't have his head up his ass, and you kind of see that at times with some directors that, they kind of get a little bit too into it and a little bit too much. They put themselves on a pedestal, and George never came across that way. And everyone that ever talked about him just said he was the nicest guy ever. And was just real laid back and very funny.
Somebody could write a book on the philosophy of George A. Romero.
Oh,
because truthfully, from what I've gathered throughout the years, dude was cool as fuck. It's that simple. And there is a wit and wisdom, and you read about how he would write. He would go on those 72-hour writing sprees like an animal, just to get what he wanted. And there seems to be a philosophy, and again, that working man approach. It's something that's missing, but we're getting it back. I think we're slowly getting it back, with Obsession, things like that. Like it's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, you're seeing a lot more indie filmmakers and then people that are transitioning into becoming filmmakers that are known for other stuff. And I think that's awesome because we're kind of, I feel like for a while there, horror was very Hollywood. To me, anyway. It just felt like everything, the only way you were getting a mainstream horror film was you were established.
Yeah.
And then in the last, I don't know, 3 years, I guess you could say, 3 years or so, it just seems even more so. Everyone's getting an opportunity to make their mark in the industry. I did want to say something because you mentioned about the 72-hour writing stuff. That is one of my favorite quotes that George ever gave, because it's so funny. He's talking about writing Resident Evil, and it's like, we busted our balls writing those drafts. He's like, I'm talking marathons, 72 hours straight. And he's going on about how he loved Resident Evil, and he's like, I want to write this and show them this is how you do this shit. Like that to me is like just like George always came across as like really laid back and really funny, where he's just having fun even when he's talking to people, but he gets very energetic talking about these things that he's very passionate about. And that always stuck with me. And I remember laughing when I first read that quote on his website, back in the early 2000s. So it's just always stuck with me.
It's with a lot of these guys, like I consider maestros, and there's a whole bunch of them from David Lynch to Wes Craven. And when it comes down to it, it's like, brother, you could pass away tomorrow. You got nothing to prove. Mm-hmm. And what came across in the documentary was, yeah, it's the late 90s and I got something to prove. And it's like most guys at his age can rest on their laurels,
Mm-hmm.
but there are the few like Ridley Scott that are just going to, fuck it, I'm going for the gusto. I'm going to try to give you everything I got.
George was, from everything that I have always seen and like people that knew him personally, he never thought himself as a master of anything. He would tell, these are close people with him that said, like, you would go up to him and say, your movie's so great. I love your work. You're a master of the craft. And he would say, they're okay. The last one was better. I'm getting a little bit better each time. He's like, one of these days I'm going to figure it out. He was very humble when it came to that. And, that stuck with me too, hearing how he would address his fans. He wasn't going out there and being like, oh yeah, I know I'm great. He had a very reserved way of talking about his own work and, his craft. And it sounded like even toward the end of his life, he was, unfortunately, it came across like he was suffering from imposter syndrome, that even up to his last days, he he just didn't think he was good enough, and he didn't think anyone would care. And that honestly broke my heart hearing that from like some of his close friends that are talking about him and saying that, he's on his deathbed and just saying like, no one gives a shit about my work. And it's like, that's not true. There's millions of people that love you. And everyone I talked to said whenever he showed up to an event, it was a minimum 6 hours. You had to wait in line 6 hours to talk to him because he would make sure that you got your time with him.
Yeah, listen, it blows my mind. He's one of those dudes that it's like anybody who's worth their salt will tell you, like, he's that guy. Like Stephen King will tell you, he's that guy. I know that he is. And when you have people that admire your work, and it was everybody. It was the special effects artists. He reinvented the entire genre. Like, not even just zombies, just go out and make a movie. Like, go out and do this, and whatever happens, and you commit. And that was kind of my question for you was, what was the genesis of this documentary? Because I'm thinking to myself, this is crazy. Because, again, it's one of those, it's like, the old Marvel comics, What If? And it's one of those greatest what ifs in horror. What if George Romero got to make the Resident Evil movie? Because I will be honest, and I'm not going to be a dick. I love Milla Jovovich. Paul W.S. Anderson gave us Event Horizon. Like, no shade whatsoever. But that movie was not what I wanted. So it was a bit disappointing as a kid seeing that in theaters. And now that I've been able to go over the facts and see what Romero was doing, I'm like, oh no, that his version was what we wanted. So how do you even undertake? Because you got the Japanese brothers over from Capcom, you got even the angry video game nerd James Rolfe, and everybody just committed to this project and their love of either the Resident Evil franchise or Romero himself. How did you put this together? Because it seems crazy.
I think I once described it as I got it completed out of pure spite and hatred. You gotta keep in mind that there's 17 interviews in that documentary, and I filmed 22. A few of them ended up on the cutting room floor, and I think I asked like 40 or 50 people. So there were a lot of no's. I even had the balls to go to Constantine Film and ask like Rob Colzer for an interview. Like, I was trying to get as many people as I could that were willing to tell their story. And some people, wouldn't reply. Some people were politely like, I don't think I had much I could really say on the issues. Some people, I think, wanted to keep their material back for something else that they're doing that might be in connection with that, where they wanted to talk about it as part of something else. So, like, I couldn't fault people. But it originally started, first off, I had been researching that movie since George Romero was announced. So I already knew a lot of the material, and, I had the screenplay, and I had all these different files, and I had followed the progress of the movie through each stage of development. And around 2018, I ended up doing a YouTube channel. I was doing YouTube for a bit and streaming video games, and at that point I was like, I'm never going to make movies. It was one thing after another. So I had a YouTube channel, and I was doing like some movie reviews, playing video games, and I ended up doing a entire video on George Romero's Resident Evil. And I didn't really like it. I'm not necessarily the best storyteller. So for me to sit there and like narrate for like 30 minutes about George, I'm like, this isn't the best. And I feel like there's different ways I could do the information. And I really wanted to go a little bit more in depth with the entire process. So I wanted to redo the video. And I linked up with a guy named Robbie McGregor I had originally helped him like 10 years prior to that, working on an article about the entire development and production of the first movie. And I had gotten some information on Alan McElroy's screenplay.
Yeah.
So he remembered me from that, and we linked up, and I'm like, hey, I want to do this like YouTube documentary about George Romero's Resident Evil, and I think it's going to be a little bit about his life, because I feel like I essentially want to make an evergreen documentary where you can just go into it, whether you're a George Romero fan, a Resident Evil fan, or you know nothing about anything, and you're just watching it to check it out, and you're not going to get lost. You know, you're going to know what George Romero is, you're going to know what Resident Evil is, and you're going to understand by the end of it why it was so important to the horror community, to George Romero fans, and just everything imaginable that we could possibly throw at you. So he agreed to help, and right around the time as we started doing all the research on it, we're like, man, this could be longer than an hour, you know, depending on how we do this. And then they announced the George A. Romero Archive at Pittsburgh University, and they even stated George's scripts are in the archive. So I began harassing and I do jokingly call it harassment, because I was constantly emailing the curator of the archive, Ben, which, you know, Ben ended up doing a interview in the documentary. And then COVID hits, and I'm like, oh, fuck, you know? So that thing was shut down for a year and a half. And for a year and a half, I would email Ben to be like, hey, it's opening up yet? It was the fall of 2020 where I was starting to get into the communities and realizing like Living Dead Weekend was a thing, and was starting to actually finally go to conventions. I was 36 when I went to my first conventions, and I was like, man, I should have been doing this years ago. So I started to learn who was who within the community and within like the Romero community. And then I started talking to a few people, and they're like, oh, you should get a hold of Suze Romero. You know, she might be interested in this. So I did email Suze Romero, and she responded, and we talked on the phone, and she gave me her blessings. You know, God rest her soul. She just recently passed away. And it was because of Suze's support. You know, she was really excited that someone wanted to do this documentary about George and this project that meant a lot to George. And because of that, I'm like, I have to get this made. So it took a while because of COVID, and then kind of getting all the necessary pieces together, you know, getting the right crew, I started finding pillars of the Resident Evil community that had contacts, had people that got me in touch with Capcom, so I get to talk to Capcom and get a license through them to do this. So I do like to point out at times that it's an officially licensed documentary from Capcom, so I think that's actually pretty cool. I think I'm one of the only Resident Evil fans to get a license to go do something, to the best of my knowledge, at least on film, because, you know, the movie rights are through a corporation. I'm just one dude that personally got to talk to Capcom. And so I got the license, and then, you know, got Suze's blessings, because I didn't want to do something. I explained to her my intent. Like, I love George. I'm not going to talk bad about him. I'm going to this is like a pro George Romero documentary. And it wasn't so much that I hate the films. You know, I don't agree with the films. I think the first one's okay. There's a couple things I don't like about the first movie, but the first movie is probably the most Resident Evil movie we ever got. That is actually competently shot, and it just feels like a really good movie, even though it's cheesy at times. But again, that's the games, you know, they're pretty cheesy. So, you know, it was right cast, budget. I think everything worked out in the end for the first movie, even if I'd rather see George Romero make it. but I do enjoy the first movie. But at the same time, I'm like, hey, I want to tell George's story because Paul Anderson, he's not going to be hurt by this. He had, I may not like the movies, but the Resident Evil movies made over $1 billion at the box office, so what do I know? Anderson has his own career. Constantine Film has owned the rights for like 30 years. This isn't going to hurt anyone. So I want to be able to tell George's story because no one really did that. They did not do that when it came to, because there was always misinformation. It was always like, he got fired because of this, or you would hear like really weird stuff. And I even put one of the weird piece of information in there in the documentary where someone was like, oh yeah, he got fired because he wanted to put sunglasses on all the zombies. And it's like, that's not even in the script. Like, obviously that is not a George Romero thing he would have done. He was writing a classic zombie movie with other monsters. So I wanted to try as best as I could to set the record straight. And it was unfortunate that, a lot of people that were directly connected into the production had either passed away or just weren't able to do interviews. But I did what I could by getting like a wide selection of different people that could kind of tell their stories. And that seemed to work in my favor because I heard a lot of people that said, we normally don't hear from these people. So it was nice, because I would get things where like people would say like, whenever you talk about George, Tom Savini is always going to be in it.
Yeah.
And they're like, it's always Tom Savini and Greg Nicotero and Russ Strider. And nothing against any of those people. Absolutely love all of them. But people were even saying that it's nice to see other people who don't normally get the spotlight, and you get other stories about George and other bits and pieces that are unique to the documentary where these people are just telling their stories about George. And then at the same time, I also got to interview Kenichi, the scenario writer for the first game. And to the best of my knowledge, I was told that was the first time he ever did anything on camera. So that was like a unique, we didn't even like cut anything out of it. It was like, I'm getting as much screen time with Kenichi as possible because any other time it's only been like translated from Japanese in a magazine somewhere. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then, it was neat. So we met the correct people at the right time that would connect us to all these different people. And the next thing you know, there's fans coming in saying like, hey, I'm in Japan. I can get these interviews. I can go over here and get these interviews. Do you need, I had one guy that was like, do you want video game footage? Because I can just play the games for you. And I'm like, I could play the games, but I'm like, I don't have time to sit here and play 14 hours of video games footage and like try and get the best scenarios. Like I'm in the middle of shooting a movie. So I actually had people that were playing the games to get specific clips that I need. And they would sometimes like go do their own. I had like an odd request from one of them where I was like, hey, could you get like this random thing for me? And they're like, sure. And they go off and get it. But it was a lot of fun. It was a very fun shoot. It was troubling at times because we only had so much money and like trying to squeeze every dime out of it. And I remember looking at, there was like a reel that we did like the first few days of filming. And then we had to take a break for like 3 weeks because we were scheduled the next month to go to a mansion and we're going to do all this footage. So I remember asking the cinematographer, my film partner, Tom Ravenalt, and I was like, can you put together a reel, like just like 2 minutes of just some of the shots that we did and just do some quick color grading? And he sent it back and it was like, oh my God, we're going to get along just fucking fine. And then I would say by April, this was 2023, April 2023, he managed to edit together a couple interviews and some of the footage we did. and some of the narration. And we had like this 30-minute reel. And I remember sending it to my agent, who started sending it to various distributors. And they're like, they ain't finished filming yet, but here's a 30-minute preview of the kind of material you're going to see. We start getting all these different, offers to come in. And I always point out, like, we sold the movie before we even finished filming. That was pretty neat. Yeah, that was pretty neat. We were actually in the black before we even finished. And I was like, what is going on? We sent the 30-minute reel out, and I remember giving it to one of Romero's friends, George Demick, who ended up doing an interview, and he called me, and I answered the phone. I'm like, hey, George. And he's like, you son of a bitch. And like, he sounded all angry. I'm like, oh man, did I do something wrong? Because it was very emotional. Like, we actually had like a lot of emotional stuff in it even then. And he's like, I thought this was just going to be about a movie that George never made. And by the end of it, I'm bawling my eyes out.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm just fucking with you. But at the same time, he's like, I'm serious. I bawled my eyes out.
It's a human story.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic documentary, but at the end of the day, it's a very human story. I mean, you definitely got me, because you had people that were invested so emotionally. Romero had a profound effect on so many of us. When we interviewed Demick, there was not a dry eye in that room. When he sat there and was just kind of going back to that day. And, and with all of them, I, cleared it beforehand. I didn't want it to be a gotcha, but hey, we're going to talk about this thing that, is traumatic to you. But, they all agreed, like, yeah, we want to talk about this. And they understood, like, why I was doing it. And, at the end of the day, part of the reason why I decided to focus on George's passing was because so many years people would just talk about George, and when it came to the Resident Evil movie, it was always split. It was always like, either you loved it or you fucking despised it. And after years of seeing people saying like, George sucks and his script sucks and he's a terrible director, and I'm like, you know what, I want to show George as a human being. I want to show that this project did mean a lot to him. It wasn't about it wasn't just about, oh, I'm gonna make millions of dollars. He actually deeply cared about the source material, and he loved the video game, and he just wanted to make a video game adaptation that honored the spirit of the game and was going to be this really terrifying, gory horror film through his lens. And, I love the screenplay for it. Is it perfect? No, but it's George. And I think that's the thing that I love about it, is it's like everything you love about George Romero in one script. And it has it's like the best of all of his movies kind of rammed together. And I feel like it would have been like his modern day masterpiece of like a best hits album, where you're like, oh yeah, this is like everything from his filmography in one movie. When I first set out to do this doc, I just wanted to tell that story. That's all I cared about. I'm like, man, this is going to end up on YouTube. I'm going to do it for nothing. I'm just going to blow thousands of dollars to make this YouTube video. And I did not care if I made a dime off of it. And I remember I was going to a convention for a few years in Gettysburg called Creature Feature Weekend. And the owner loved the idea of it, and I had become close friends to him. He loved Night of the Living Dead. That was like Halloween. He watches Night of the Living Dead. He does not. He's like, everyone else watches Halloween, I watch George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. He's like, that's the classic to me. And through this long story, I talked about how my mother introduced me.
And she had this VHS tape, and it was rather unique. And I'm like, I could never find the exact same tape. And I've been looking for it for 15 years. And he's like, I have that tape. And he ended up mailing it to me at no cost. So he lost money mailing it to me. And he was just like, you can have it, because if someone went that long and loved that version so much, and to the best of my knowledge, because he lives near me, turned out we live very close by, that could possibly be my mother's original tape, because the idea that there'd be two tapes within 30 minutes of each other. So I became really good friends, and I asked him, like, would you mind if I like announced my documentary there? And we shot this like teaser reel. It was like a minute long, and we had shot like all this different footage. It was like real light stuff, like video game footage shot on a TV, and we had like the turning zombie, and we had like artwork and photographs on the wall, and it was like real atmospheric piece with narration. And he's like, yeah, I'd love that. And we did this Q&A, and it was just this thing. It was pretty neat to have like I think it was like 75 people, and it came to like just hear about this announcement. And so we did this announcement, and then it was like, I don't know, like a week later, like word was slowly getting around, because the convention had made a post about it. So then I get contacted by someone who wanted to ask me questions. They're like, hey, you know, do you have any screenshots from the teaser? And like, what's the project about? And I'm like, so I give them information. And then there's just this, I think it was like Timeline. Can't even remember who was it. It was a publication. And I remember them having an article up, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Like, there's my name. There's the people that are working with me, and it's talking about this project. So I'm like, that's pretty cool. So then I think it was like a week later. So this is like beginning of September 2022. You know, we had only shot this little teaser. But I remember waking up in the morning, late morning. I was up real late, and my phone is blown up. There are all these messages, and there are people in all caps like, dude, you are in bloody disgusting right now. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And there's like links, and I'm like, everyone's sending me links. So I like click on it, and there it is. It's entire article from Bloody Disgusting about the documentary. And I had grown up reading Bloody Disgusting since high school. So for me, it was like, oh my God, they're talking about something I'm doing. And then it just kept going. And it's not so much about like it was very surreal. And I remember Rue Morgue doing an article on me. And my father was like so proud that this magazine, you know, he doesn't love horror. But he left me a message on a voicemail, and he's talking about how proud he is of me. And he's like, I want to read it. I want to read about your movie. And I still have that voice message. My father unfortunately passed away last year. So I still have that. And you can hear how proud he is. And he passed away about a week or two before I got announced by Fangoria being nominated for Best Documentary. And, you know, my two goals in life for my career, I only ever wanted two things. I didn't think they were real big. You know, like I'm not there like, oh, I want to win an Oscar. You know, I was like, I would be happy if I could win a Fangoria Chainsaw Award, and I would love to have Vinegar Syndrome release one of my movies. October, we win Best Documentary. We get the Fangoria Chainsaw Award, which is up there. And then December, Vinegar Syndrome releases the documentary on Blu-ray. And I remember joking and laughing and saying, like, I need to get new goals. Like, so it was pretty wild throughout the production. And, while we were waiting for the release, it took forever to get it legally cleared. The documentary went through a lot of legal clearances. I can remember, I think I turned in like a 53-page spreadsheet that was like every single shot and music and sound effect. Like we had to basically show where everything came from. And of course, we had lots of edits. I think the first cut of it was like 2.5 hours. And I do joke about this now, and it's been in other interviews that we were doing like so many cuts to it, and that they originally gave me like a time limit. They said like it had to be like no more than 105 minutes. And I would get like the next round of stuff that I had to cut out or change. And some of it's very tedious. I had the same lawyers as South Park. So you knew you were covered, but you had to get that golden ticket, the fair use coverage letter. And so that was the goal. And I remember each time they would come back, and sometimes it would be like so microscopic, like you need to cut 0.02 seconds off of this clip here. And I'm like, this is insane. So after like the first two or three passes on it, I remember like, oh, I'm going to cut this stuff out, but then add in a minute. And I started adding a minute each round. And I think I got it up to like 115 minutes, something like that, when they finally caught on and we're like, oh shit, he's like making it longer. So they finally were like, okay, it's good. And then they cleared it. But there was some last minute stuff in there that I didn't like, because there were certain sections that we had to completely take out and then redo. And at the time we had signed with a European distributor for the European region, and we were coming up on like the deadline. And I'm like, oh my God, if we don't get this thing cleared in like the next few days, we're in breach of contract. So I had to, at like the 11th hour, we're like replacing entire sections and redoing audio. And that's one of the reasons why there's sections where it's like just a voiceover of like a radio. There were completely different sections in there. We did get approval to do a director's cut. So we went back and actually filmed new interviews and like reorganized the story some. I have no idea how long it is, because the whole timeline is tore apart. There's all these gaps in it, but if it's under 3 hours, I will be very surprised. It is, we added so much to it. And I took some of the constructive criticism about the doc of like things that people wanted to see in there. They wanted to see more about George's screenplay and more analysis. So I think we took it from 25 minutes, and now I think that section's like 50 minutes long. And we added like a couple more personal stories about George, and we expanded a little bit of the commercial and a lot more about the Alan McElroy screenplay. We just kind of put in everything we could to just give fans like more material and make it just feel more complete than the shorter version that we were forced to release.
Well, I mean, the sell is so easy. The sell of the movie is a Reese's peanut butter cup. Do you like peanut butter? Yeah, that's Resident Evil. Do you like chocolate? That's George Romero. So the sell of it is so easy. And there is such a crossover between the fandoms. Yeah. And the way that I saw the documentary was almost like there's this old wizard, and that's George, and he's living in a castle. And it's many years into the future. And he's not so sure about his powers anymore. And then someone comes to him and says, well, here's this video game adaptation that we want to do. And what's crazy is that Resident Evil in its own way is all of his films, all his filmography screamed out into the world. And then the zeitgeist comes back. And it's, hey, remember all that shit that you created? Well, it influenced everybody, especially these Japanese video game makers. And now we need you to tell that story. And there is that emotional component to it. And I think George did have something to prove. I really can't recommend, if you're a horror fan, if you're a fan of the Resident Evil games, I really have to recommend this documentary. I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I made my brother watch it because he's a huge fan of both. And we were just like, Jesus Christ, how did we not see this movie? But B, I was just blown away because really, when you boil it down, it's a human story. And it's also a testament to what you did, because it started out as passion. And then I feel at a certain point, you had an obligation. Like you got, like Sue's, George's widow, well, she passed away, Jesus. His wife, she had said, hey, you've got the green light. Capcom gave you the green light. It's like the fucking Super Bowl. And they're like, here you go, Brandon, here's the ball. Now just finish it and win the game for us. And that's gotta be a mind fuck.
It was. There was at no point where I did not feel some sort of pressure on me to get it done. And I just remember doing everything that I could to make a completed project, because when you have interviews that fall through and then you're just trying to get as much footage as you can. And I lucked out. I really lucked out with some of the interviews, and I lucked out with the original voice actor for Albert Wesker to narrate the thing. And just so many people that were just so passionate about George Romero and or Resident Evil that just came in and said, we're going to help you for nothing because we just want to see the story done. And then to see so many publications to like pick up on it. Like, I remember one of my friends messaging me and saying, hey, did you know that CNN is talking about your documentary? And I was like, fucking excuse me? They're like, yeah, CNN. They were talking about it. And I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Like, and they sent me the link. And it's CNN had like this whole thing about George Romero's Resident Evil release, and they're talking. It was part of a segment that was like entertainment news, and they were talking about different things that had happened that day. And George Romero's Resident Evil took up half of the clip. Like, it beat out like other celebrity news and shit. So George was apparently more important than all this other shit that was going on that day. And I thought that was the coolest thing, to be like, oh my God, so we had like CNN and Fangoria and Rue Morgue and Deadline Europeans Deadline covered us. And it's just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I am literally a nobody. I'm just a dude that was trying to make a documentary about something I love. And I was always more excited for everyone else, because I remember messaging, like, it wasn't about me. Like, my stuff is on CNN. I remember taking a snapshot of the video, like, cover image, and I messaged Matt Blasey. And I'm like, Matt Blasey, you're on CNN. Like, it was about him, or it was about this person. Or we had a cover on Rue Morgue that was like the hazmat soldier that's in the documentary. And I messaged the actor. I'm like, hey, did you know you're on the cover of Rue Morgue? Like it was always about, like, I was so excited for other people. I didn't worry about myself. And it wasn't like, oh my God, look at all this cool stuff happening. I was more excited to see my friends succeed and get recognition. And it was so great to hear, like, because I became really good friends with George Demick. And then when people would talk about the documentary and they would say, like, oh, George Demick, his stories really resonated with me, and they, were really emotional. And I would go back and I'd take like screenshots from messages and send to him. And, he was kind of the same way. Like, he just thought like, well, I don't have too much to say. And I'm like, dude, you were literally one of the emotional heart of the entire documentary. Like when, like, you literally show people just how much George meant to people. And it was just, even to this day, it's surreal. I remember last year, because all my close friends that I got to be close with at conventions, like last year, they were fucking with me because the documentary had been out for like 6 months. It had all this press, and there I am at Living Dead weekend at the Monroeville Mall. I got a VIP pass. I'm just a guy, and I'm in line. And I don't know how many people would just walk by and be like, "The fuck are you doing in line?" And they would just keep walking. And then someone else would walk by and be like, "Seriously? They're making you stand in line?" And then
you're the king of the dead.
There are all these people around me that are in line, and I was just talking to them, shooting the shit, because you're waiting there for like an hour to get through, and they're all first timers. They're like, "This is the first time I've ever been to the mall," and so I'm just talking to them about their love for George. I don't even say anything about myself. I'm just talking to them, and they're starting to notice when people are like, "Fuck are you doing in line?" And then what really got them was a group comes by of my friends, and they're like, "Mr. Salisbury, do you want a coffee? Do you need a coffee? What kind of coffee do you want?" So I'm like, "I don't need anything." And they're like, no, we're going to get you a coffee. And by this time, like, people are starting to like look at me really fucking weird. And I give them a coffee, and then they take off, and then they come back with it. So I'm sitting there, standing there drinking my coffee, and one of the people's like, "Okay, what gives?" They're like, "Are you someone that we're supposed to know?" And I'm like, "No, I'm a nobody." And they're like, no, we're serious. What did you do that so many people are engaging with you like that?" And so I told him, like, "Oh, well, I did this little documentary called George Romero's Resident Evil." And this dude's eyes like get really huge. And he's like, "You are not going to believe it, but I had to fly here." I forget where he was from, like Midwest. Yeah. He's like, "I had a couple hours to kill in the flight. I watched your documentary a few hours ago on my way here." And I'm like, just like, "That's what you choose to watch on your flight?" And but he was like really excited. He's like, "You directed that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I did." And wasn't just me. I had a whole team of people, but it was a funny story like that. So like things have sort of changed at like the conventions now, where I don't like pushing the ego, because there'll be people like, "Oh, you're part of George's legacy," and I'm like, no, I'm not. Don't ever say that. But they'll say that, and then there's people from the Resident Evil communities that are like, "Oh, you're part of the Resident Evil legacy," and I'm like, no,
you're a part of the mythos.
Yeah, and it's, but that wasn't what I set out to do. I didn't go out there to try and be rich. I didn't go out there to try and make a name for myself. I really just wanted to tell George's story because I love George Romero, not just his movies, but I love him as a person. I, never met this guy, never met George. I wanted to, I had an opportunity to, and it was one of those where plans fell through, and I said, "I'll see him next time." And then next time, the next year he passed away. So for me, I had a lot of guilt about not doing what I needed to do to go see him. And the documentary was my eulogy for George Romero. I just poured everything that I idolize about that man and the respect that I have for him. And it was sort of like, it was like a catharsis.
Yeah.
Where you get to kind of like say everything you ever wanted to say about, your idol, the person that, to me, like, he's the one, he is the individual whose films and his interviews and everything that I've ever read and seen about the man, it inspired me above all else to pursue filmmaking as a career. And it was like, what better way to start a film career than honor that person and just do something out of love. It wasn't about making a dollar. I mean, originally I was just going to throw it on YouTube because I figured no one would want to watch it. And then like next thing I know, I'm like getting interviewed all the time and winning a Fangoria Award, and I'm like, what is going on? So
well, we've become a very death obsessed culture. It's so sad. There's so much tragedy. And what I always tell listeners of The Offering is that if you love somebody and you truly admire them, let them know. No matter how small, no matter how big, let them know now. Celebrate people while they're alive. Do you know if George was able to see the documentary or his thought?
Oh no. He was long gone. He passed in 2017, and and we didn't even start working on it until 2020. So it was, that was part of the reason why I did some videos on my YouTube channel in 2018 was, it was a year later, and George was on my mind because they were starting to make posts about, oh, it's been a year since George passed, and it was starting to weigh heavily on me. And then around that, and then not too long after was the Resident Evil 2 remake came out, and it was like very like Resident Evil focused. So I'm like,
he's still alive. Like there's people that because they've been such a part of my childhood. Yeah. And to my thought, in my mind right now, George is at home, he's having a piece of pie and he's watching, Jeopardy or whatever. And I couldn't even line it up. But what was, there's the whole, there's the Garf. What was the reaction from Garf and everybody else over there?
Well, like a lot of the people at Garf, like a lot of them helped out with it because their artist in residence, Ryan Carr, he did the both posters for it, and Christian Tabrakis, he did an interview for it, and Ben Rubin's part of Garf, he did an interview for it, and Christian Stavrakis, he's another artist in residence, he did an interview for it, and they were all very helpful. And like Suze was very big about like, and even Peter Grunwald. Peter's got a little weird because they didn't want to be on camera, for one reason or another. But I'm like, hey, would you be willing to at least answer questions? And then we'll just show like the text answers. So he was really cool about that. And it was, just a matter of like everyone really loved the concept behind it. Oh yeah, Matt Blasey, who was host of one of their podcast shows. He did an interview, and it was just Norman England. He's like the liaison in Japan. He did an interview. So Garf was like real heavily involved in wanting to volunteer their time to just talk about George. And, that's part of the reason why we talk about Garf in the later portions of it. And we originally shot lots and lots of material about the archive and George and the Garf and
it's fascinating to me. Yeah, it's just you're stepping inside his mind.
Yeah, and now like since last year, I've started volunteering at the Living Dead convention with Garf just to like give back because obviously the documentary did well and kind of got my name out there. And I'm like, well, they all took their time to do stuff for me, and I love George Romero, and I just want to. So usually like at Living Dead weekend, you'll find me at the Garf booth the entire weekend because I would just much rather spend time with those people and, do what I can. I try and do what I can to give back because like I've always given to Garf. Suze used to call me Garf's #1 fan. That was her thing for me. She's like, you are Garf's #1 fan. And I think with her passing, like I need to get back more because I've been sidetracked with other projects and things. I need to get back to really being the bullhorn out there because I was always. One thing that really hurt me was Facebook took away where you could donate to Garf. Because every year for my birthday, I would ask people to donate to Garf. Yeah. And, and I, you know, a lot of people do like, oh, their mission means a lot to me. And like with Garth, it absolutely did, because I loved Sousa's mission of doing Screams in a Box, where kids get sent an entire film kit to borrow and make their first horror film.
That's awesome.
And then they would have like a little film festival that they would live stream to show all these kids as horror films. And I loved watching that every year, and I hope it doesn't stop. And I was constantly trying to push people to go to Garth, like donate to Garth. And I'll say it now, donate to the George A. Romero Foundation, because they are trying to empower new directors. When, you know, we talked about at the beginning of this episode about this new wave of directors, they're also trying to push that. Now they're doing like the horror studies at Pittsburgh University, where they're doing these courses on horror, and they want to continue this mission of just building a network of horror related studies and archiving horror materials to preserve things, and then empowering a new era, a new generation of film directors.
Oh yeah. I mean,
who doesn't want that? You know,
yeah, of course.
George Romero, beyond creating the zombie, George Romero should be known for doing two things. One is establishing the concept of the independent horror film, that you can make movies outside the studio. The other thing that he was responsible for, and I do absolutely 100% believe this, he ushered in, him and MH10, Russ Strider, John Russo, Gary Strider, all those people, they ushered in the modern horror film. And you can watch Night of the Living Dead and see elements that are very classic to 50s horror, that kind of B-movie, almost cheesiness because it's low budget. But then as that movie progresses, you really start feeling the beginnings of modern horror, the shadow and lighting, and just how dark the material gets. I don't think people give that film enough credit anymore for just how fucking depressing and dark that film is.
Listen,
because
if one thing, George Romero was a film director, but he was also a sociologist. He held even the whole point with the zombies is the zombies aren't the monsters. We're the monsters. And he was exploring things in his films. He was way ahead of his time. Like, people want to cite, you know, to give Jordan Peele his flowers, but it's like, there was a guy who was doing this before you were doing this too.
Yeah. And the unfortunate thing about George was he was always ahead of society. So his films, and you know, Day of the Dead gets a lot of respect now and a lot of love. But when I got back into George, Day of the Dead was quite despised. And I was there on the internet defending that movie and getting like told like, that movie is terrible. That was the end of George's career. It sucked. And then you started seeing like in the mid 2000s where it started to shift. And then now it's like this whole generation revisited it and found out like all the shit to love about it. And I started seeing it now with Night Riders. For the last 5 years, Night Riders is getting a resurgence, and Diary of the Dead, even Land of the Dead. Land of the Dead was not well liked by a lot of George's fans, and it's now getting revisited where people are like, you know what? Land of the Dead's actually pretty damn good.
Because he's saying something.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter which film it is, whether it's Survival of the Dead, Night Riders, he's saying something.
Survival of the Dead is going to be the one that I think is going to need another 10 years. I just don't think it's connected yet. And honestly, with Survival, like, I like the movie. It's not his best work, but I like it. And the thing that I like about it is knowing more about the behind the scenes of it. And for George, that was him finally getting to make his Western. And it being his last film, I always tell people, you know what's great about George? He went out the same way he came in. As an independent film director, he never sold his fucking soul. He had money dangled in front of him to make Land of the Dead 2 or whatever Universal wanted. Yeah. And he had such a terrible time. He was like, you know what? I'm going to go back and just make independent films because it was so much easier, and that's what he did. And I can't fault him for making low budget films after that where he just did whatever the hell he wanted, and he went out happy. His last film, he was happy on the set of Survival of the Dead. And I do love the fact that people are starting to revisit Diary, because I do remember when Diary of the Dead came out, people are like, there is no way with all this crazy stuff going on that someone's just going to record it the whole time. That's so unbelievable. And then you start looking at society where the most horrendous shit will go on in the world. And
we record everything.
There's someone there recording it. And you're like, Jesus Christ, George is a prophet. And I think that's part of the reason why people went back and revisit it. But, there's some things that are in there that where like George is telling jokes and people don't get it. Diary of the Dead, there's the whole thing of the college students are making a mummy horror film, and the mummy is running, and the director is like, no. His ankles would snap off. He needs to be slow and lumbering. That's not how a dead person would walk. And that's George critiquing stuff like the Dawn of the Dead remake, where they have these zombies that run like Olympians. And
it's micromanagement is really what it is. It's micromanaging. When you're on Universal's dime, the lawyers show up, quality control, and use.
But it was always funny to see him like add those little like personal pieces that are really just him like making fun of Hollywood, really, making fun of things and having these little in jokes that are really just, they're gags for him. And, and when people find out like, oh, well, that was him making fun of the Dawn of the Dead remake, or, Night Riders was a cautionary tale that was all about his troop. He was King Billy, and it was his warning to his film family about don't get obsessed with the idea of Hollywood. It's not what you think it is. Stay independent. We need to be free. We're not, don't go legit like that. And it was really neat. Like, I got to watch Night Riders with that in mind. And it really made me appreciate that film. To this day, Night Riders is still my favorite George film. I love the zombie films, but Night Riders, it's my favorite because it's the most personal story that George told.
It was when I was a kid, the distribution was fucked up on it. So it was a very hard film to find.
Yeah.
So it was, when I was deep, I want to say I didn't see it until almost the late 90s because it just wasn't available.
And I was told that one of the reasons why it did not do well was because at the time, people are like, who the hell cares about medieval reenactment? And, I'm early 40s now, but I didn't realize that, according to a lot of the people I talked to, they're like, yeah, like Renaissance fairs and shit, they weren't a thing when Night Riders came out. They were just starting.
Yeah.
So George was ahead of the curve that, people are going to go pay money to watch jousts and medieval culture and shit, and it flopped because it wasn't a big thing. And it's always one of those just bad timing where it's like, man, George, if you made that 10 years later, like the 90s, they had all, Excalibur came out too around that time and, did much better. But, by the 90s, they were doing so many like medieval films with, Robin Hood and First Knight. And I feel like, man, if he had just waited 10 years, he would have probably done so much better. And that seems to be the case with everything. If Diary of the Dead was made 10 years after the fact, it would have probably done much better.
Well, what David Bowie always said was that audiences and fans grow at different rates. Mm-hmm. So you're David Bowie and you're making a record, and this is where you're at emotionally, mentally, and you're like, this is going to be the hot shit. And then the fans hear it and they're like, I don't know about this. But then they revisit it 10 years later and they're like, Bowie's a fucking genius,
That's John Carpenter's The Thing. I remember that being on like USA Network.
Yep.
Early
it was
90s.
A flop.
Yeah, it was a flop, and I caught it late 80s, early 90s when they started to play it, Saturday night on USA. And I'm like, and it took me like 10 years to figure out what the fuck the movie was because I didn't have access to the internet at the time. And then for its 20th anniversary, they started like, releasing it out on DVD and shit. And then that's when I realized, like, oh my God, that's that movie I watched as a kid. Because I never got to watch the beginning of it. It was always like, oh, the dog kennel scene or, Palmer, the blood test scene. And it scared the shit out of me, even as a kid. And I just thought that was like an incredible movie. I remember finally getting it on DVD and getting to watch it uncut. Edited from uncensored. From
not the TBS version that we grew up with.
Yeah. So, and I just remember watching that thing over and over.
So you're a physical media guy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and we wanted to introduce a new segment on the show. I wanted to see if there was something you could recommend to our audience that you dig, that's on physical media and why they should check it out.
Okay. I do have one. And besides my documentary, which is available at Vinegar Syndrome, I'm not going to talk about my movie. I wanted to talk about, now there was a newer release recently, which turned out to not be well liked by the fans because there was audio issues and stuff. So I'm going to recommend an older version of the movie, and it's George Romero related. It is not it's not Night Riders. I wanted to stick with my theme here of talking about horror.
Yeah.
So we are gonna have to go with the Screen Factory release of Day of the Dead, the original 1985 movie. Great version of the film. It's not perfect. There's rumors that there is a new release coming from a different distributor, that they're actually going to go back to the source material. But this one has a lot of different features on it and audio commentaries. And for me, having it on Blu-ray, this is like my favorite George Romero zombie film. I feel like it's where his imagination and budget finally met. And it's just, I think a lot of people gave it credit for in the 80s. And I love a lot of the subtext in it. I love the special effects are amazing, obviously. I love the characters and the story. John's speech about how it's a punishment. He talks about like how we got too big for our britches, and this was a curse. The idea of zombies coming back was a curse on humanity. That is a great speech. And I love Day of the Dead so much. I got a recreation of the newspaper. So
I will say with that DVD, with that Blu-ray release, it also has an amazing documentary on it that you can't get on the new version. So I will also recommend, please buy that Scream Factory Blu-ray just for the documentary alone.
That's the World's End, the Legacy of Day of the Dead.
Yeah. It's one of my favorites that they, it's a peek behind the scenes. It's funny because my recommendation is also a Scream Factory Blu-ray.
Yes.
It is Nightbreed. And recently this was brought out by Scream Factory on 4K. With that being said, they only remastered the theatrical cut, which sucks. So on this one, you've got Clive Barker's cut and you've got what they call the Cabal cut, which is just all the missing pieces and things. Listen, if you watch, this is one of those cases, you watch the theatrical version, you might have a lot of questions. You watch the Cabal cut and you're like, oh shit, this actually makes sense. It's Clive Barker's X-Men. I totally understand. And also for avid offering listeners, stay tuned. This might just be a new episode. I recommend it, man. And that's the thing. It's crazy. We get 4K. We're spoiled little bitches, and now we go back and we're like, no, listen. And I don't want to start no shit, but I'm going to start a little shit. Scream Factory. Ever since everything that's been going on with Groove Media, they've kind of lost the sauce, and everybody. That's why I think a lot of people abandon ship, and you've got all these other companies. They're former Scream Factory people. So no shade, but Scream Factory, you've been fucking up lately.
Yeah, like I'm really really hoping like the next version of Day of the Dead, I'm looking forward to that one. And but I have a lot of Scream Factory and Arrow, and who are some of the other ones? Like I love like all these like specialty distributors that you can tell they are, for the most part, you can tell they are passionate about this shit. Like the Scream Factory release for Creep Show. I think they have like a comic book of like one of the stories that was cut from production. They did that. I think that but I love Criterion Collection. I get a Criterion for me is like the standard for it, because you get your little essay book, and you always get like the best materials.
And the prints the scans always look.
My God.
Like I just got Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and it's gorgeous. The color saturate, it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous scan.
Oh yeah.
I recommend it to listeners of The Offering.
I was just watching last month. I was watching Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai, and it was like the best possible version of it to date. For a film from the 1950s, and like I'm a big Kurosawa fan, and Night of the Living Dead is in the Criterion Collection, and they did an amazing release on that, and it got a lot of love after so many different unofficial, unlicensed releases over the decades. It was really nice to have Criterion go back and actually clean up the original image and like put it into 4K and just kind of show it the love that it needed.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous film. It's light and shadow. It's the fundamentals of filmmaking, because it's all there. Like we always tell people, like you want to make a movie, you show them a movie like Night of the Living Dead, and you're like, this is you can learn how to make a movie from that film, and that's a beautiful thing.
I agree with you.
So dig this. You are now the Rocky Balboa of horror documentaries. You were the little engine that could. You've had this great success. I love the film. Everybody loves it. It's very heartfelt. It's very emotional. And I'm like, God damn. I'm like, this son of a bitch makes this movie, and now I'm about to cry. And I'm having these feelings and all these existential thoughts about the legacy of George Romero. So you, my friend, let me just say thank you. You've paid your debt to one of the maestros. Like you owe nothing. You owe the world nothing because you told that story. But the question becomes, what is next for you, Brandon? What's next?
So after the documentary, my cinematographer, he wanted to direct a feature horror film that was based on a short film that he had done several years before. In fact, he met me through the film festival at Creature Feature Weekend, the same weekend that I was announcing the documentary. He was showing off his short film. So the next thing I wanted to do after that was help fund his horror film. So we went off and did that. It was called Whistle to the Maples. It stars Charlie Krzyzlowski, who was Chris Redfield in the original Resident Evil game. So it's the OG Chris Redfield, and he plays one of the villains in it. And then it also has a cameo by Jim Crut, who's the helicopter zombie from Dawn of the Dead. Great guy. And we just made this like indie horror film, and it just released. It kind of got released by Amazon around the time that we were crowdfunding my next film. So like the marketing for it kind of got downplayed by the people that we work with, because we decided to link up with Residents of Evil. It's a YouTube channel, covers Resident Evil, and they were a huge help in making the documentary. Well, they were doing some fan films, and we were at Creature Feature Weekend back in March as guests with the original actors from the video game to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Resident Evil. So we were just, signing autographs, partying at night. It was a really good time, and it's really fun to be able to, like, these people that it's that surreal moment. I grew up playing these video games, and then I'm getting to talk to Chris Redfield and Barry Burton, and then we seen all these fans that came out to celebrate. We had a cake. We had like a big umbrella cake that they cut up. It was super cool. So it was a great event. But while we were there, I'm like, they had known that I had wrote a Resident Evil script. And I was like, it'd be kind of cool to do this. It's really, it's a really simple idea. It's based on this Japanese-only novella from the late 90s that's a prequel to the first game. And the owner of Residents of Evil, was like, yeah, let's do it. So we quickly, got a bunch of stuff together and then launched the crowdfund. And last I looked, it was at $117,000 raised. And it's going to tell this feature-length story of the 24 hours leading up to the original game. And it follows Chris Redfield, who's investigating the murders going on in the Arklay Mountains. And then he gets a phone call from an old friend who went missing, and his connections with Umbrella. And then it just kind of spirals out of control, and it goes all the way up to the very beginning of Resident Evil 1. So you're getting to see this this missing chapter out of the story that was told 30 years ago, and now you get to see it in live action. So it's an adaptation of that. And we're doing all practical effects. It's shot in Pennsylvania. We have real locations and practical blood and gore. And, we really put a lot of work into prepping this and getting these different actors. Some of them are like pillars of the Resident Evil community. And, there's a lot of, it's very much a love letter to Resident Evil, but also has some nods to George Romero, because why not? I'm always going to have something George related as an Easter egg in there. So we have about a week left on the crowdfund, and we already passed our goal. So now we're just getting more money to put into the production and kind of make things better. And then we go shoot it in September. So we're going to have it filmed in September, and then with any luck, it'll be out next March for the 31st anniversary of Resident Evil. And hopefully fans enjoy it, because it's just a passionate love letter. I don't make a dime off of it. I'm doing it just to get a feature-length horror film out there that's on a micro budget. And while that's going on, I got the rights 2 years ago to this video game that I was a fan of. It's a horror video game, very indie. And it's sort of like The Exorcist by way of Evil Dead 2. That is the best way to describe it. It looks like you're playing like an Atari game, Nintendo type game. It's creepy, disturbing, has a lot of lore to it. It's called Faith, the Unholy Trinity. And it's about a priest who performed an exorcism in 1986, and it went wrong. Everyone died except for him. And a year later, he goes back to the house to finish what he started, because the teenage girl who is possessed escapes a mental institution, and then he wrestles not only with his guilt over failing this girl and the death of the people around him, but also he lost his faith. So it has a lot of elements of things like The Exorcist 3, of, you know, wrestling with the concepts of good and evil. It gets very cosmic, and it's one of the things I absolutely love about the game is it's not, you know, demons with like horns and hooved feet, but it's this very cosmic evil. Not necessarily Lovecraftian, but you feel very, it's a very unique view on demonology. And as the games, there's 3 games, Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and Chapter 3, they get more and more epic. And it deals with like the satanic panic, and it's kind of like, hey, what if the satanic panic was real? What if, you know, all these authority figures are actually, you know, Satanists? And
It sounds awesome. Like it's right up my wheelhouse.
It is like rock and roll. Like when you talk about a video game that is like, it's just, I fell in love with it. And the first chapter is a very simple, effective horror story. It's just the guy going back to the house, and he's fighting like all these demons and wrestling with his own guilt and trying to piece together like, well, what the hell did happen a year ago? Because I don't remember everything because I'm traumatized. And then why did we fail at an exorcism? Like, this should be easy. Like, we're exorcists. We should succeed. And you start learning all this stuff, and it starts getting like very psychological horror, but there's also lots of blood and gore in it. And there are alternate endings, and some of those get crazy. I love this game. I went out on a whim and messaged the creator because I could not stop thinking about this fucking game. And I'm like, this has to be like an art house A24 style horror film, just with lots of blood and gore and lots of like, it's just an amazing story. So
I want to play it. I'm like,
they have it on the Switch. You can get it on PC. It's on Steam. You can get a physical copy. I bought the physical copy for the Switch. It is absolutely amazing. I will send you a link. I contacted him, and he actually gave me the rights. I wrote like a 40-page pitch deck explaining everything of how I would do this movie, from like the music to the visuals to the special effects. And I'm like, I want it to be practical. I want it to feel psychological. I want chiptunes, synth wave type horror music. I want it to feel like a John Carpenter score when you're playing this game. And I'm like, here's my ideas for how I want to translate the game graphics and the colors, and all the voices in the game are done with like chiptune. It's like this like text to speech type. And I'm like, I want to keep that for the demons, because I find that fucking creepy when you watch these like ghost shows and they're like, these ghosts speak through, you know, spirits speak through a box, and it's like, hey, I owe you, you know, like very like fucked up. And I'm like, all the demons should talk like that. It just sounds fucking creepy. And he just went for it. He actually did say he had studios and like some bigger producers. He had some indie people, but he's like, I actually had some named people, and I won't embarrass them, but there were named people trying to inquire about these rights. And he's like, every single time it was just about, hey, this thing made a lot of money, so we're going to take the name and slap it on this thing that we're going to make. He said, you were the first person that didn't say, here's what we're going to change about it. You said, here's how we're going to take that game and translate it accurately into a live action film. And he's like, and that's why I'm giving you the rights, because you're the only person that seems to actually understand the core message and the core inspirations about why I even made this fucking game. Yeah. And I'm like, sold. So yeah, we've been working at that, and I've had to like put it on the back burner at times because I'm working on other stuff. But it was announced 2 months ago in Variety that Alana Pierce is producing it and writing the script. And, you know, she started a new company called Charred Pictures, and where she gets like all these big YouTubers to kind of invest in the film. And, you know, because a lot of times these indie games, that's how they get popular, is they get played by these like really big, you know, multi-millionaire YouTubers. So we have some announcements coming, but the script is being worked on, and hopefully that'll go through, because that's going to be like the next level of my career. And again, right place, right time. And I just went in very passionately and talked about this thing that I love and said, this is how I want to do it. And this is why I think it would make a great movie. So we'll see where that goes.
Listen, I'm not anybody to give advice, but stay true, stay weird, keep it surreal, because I think you and I were about the same age. And there are those elements of things, of those lo-fi games that just get under our skin.
Yep.
And I think if you're able to translate that to the screen, it's going to unnerve people in ways, a very specific way.
Yeah.
It'll freak people out. And the story is, I love cosmic horror. And I love, obviously, you know, like, it's like we talk about Sweet Home. I've gone back and played Sweet Home, and I love it. I've watched the movie. I'm like on the movie, but the game is just there's something about it. And I think if you're able to commit that, you know, in any way to cinema, you're like already 10 steps ahead of the game. Like, I'm congratulations on all of this.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We have to have a little bit of an epilogue here. A trailer dropped today.
Oh.
Listen, like you said, the universe does what the universe is going to do. And I watched your movie last night. And of course, I think the people at Constant Films or whatever, I think they're grifters, especially after the whole Fantastic Four debacle. We're not going to get into it. If you know, you know. And there I see the Constant logo. I did a trailer reaction to it. We just recorded it. And I'm like, all right. I'm like, Zach Kreger, he's 2 for 2. He's got Barbarian. I enjoyed. He's got Weapons. I enjoyed. And now it's Resident Evil. And before we even discuss it, I just want to say this. Resident Evil is impossible to adapt. And the reason it's impossible to adapt is because there's one fan who wants Leon. There's one fan who wants it to be like Resident Evil 6. Everybody has a different version of what they want it to be. And it will never be that. So I want to say, I think first of all, it's lean as fuck. I heard this thing is clocking in at 93 minutes. I dig that. We always here at the offering, we champion the 90-minute movie. With that being said, it's like he's just doing his own thing. And I'm digging it. Did you see the trailer?
Yeah. I seen that and the teaser trailer, and I may or may not know more than what is public out there regarding like the story and things, and, you know, watch the interviews. I will say, and I've said this quite a few times to people that ask me about it. I don't think that movie is made for me. Like, as the type of Resident Evil fan that I am, I don't think that movie was made for me. Does that mean that I'm going to be out there and be like, this thing fucking sucks and it needs to fail and I hope everyone fucking sucks and loses money? No, I'm not like that. You know, again, did enjoy Paul W.S. Anderson, but I don't want him to starve. No. And at the end of the day, Paul W.S. Anderson's films made $1 billion at the box office. So again, what the hell do I know? Zach Kreger, he apparently got paid $20 million to write and direct the film.
God bless him.
It's probably going to make $200 million at the box office.
Yep.
It may even go higher. You never know. It might be the highest grossing Resident Evil movie of all time. Do I think that it's Resident Evil? I think every fan is going to have to go in there and decide for themselves. Is it Resident Evil, or is it an original idea that's called Resident Evil?
Well, or is it Zach Kreger's?
I think it's
Resident Evil.
Or Zach Kreger's Resident Evil. At the end of the day, I think it's going to be a really, really good horror film.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's up to the fans to decide whether it's going to be a really, really good Resident Evil film. Will it feel like Resident Evil, or is it just going to be a Zach Kreger zombie film that's just really, really good? So I do wish him well. I don't want him to starve. I don't want him to, get backlash for it. I think it would have probably done better as an original film based on the trailer I saw. I don't get a lot of Resident Evil vibes from it. It feels like a Zach Kreger film mixed with a lot of other like common present day horror tropes. And it doesn't, to me, I didn't see anything in there that was like, oh my God, that feels like Resident Evil, because it doesn't have it.
That's been my hot take with the Evil Dead sequels as of late. I said, well, it's the IP, and we live in the age of IP where the intellectual property is stronger than anything. And my point to this, my hot take is take Evil Dead off the title and release it as Blood Weekend. Tell me how fucking well it does. Show me, because I'm willing to make a bet. It's not going to do that well without that Evil Dead name on it.
I did not see Evil Dead Rise. I haven't seen Evil Dead Burn yet. I did see I saw all the other Evil Dead stuff. I think the only one that actually has my interest at this point is the one that's coming out next year.
Yeah, the Wraith. Wrath? Is it Wrath?
Wrath.
It's Wrath.
Evil Dead Wrath. And it takes place in the 70s. And I'm like, if they can get the same feel as the first Evil Dead, if they, I don't care if they go Cabin in the Woods again. If they can just get that isolated, we're in this one location, it's isolated in the middle of the woods, and there are, demonic trees and weird fucking monsters and possessed people and the really whacked out shit of the first two movies. If they can do that and make it this really dark, gross horror film, they got me.
Well, I have a feeling, I have a theory that once they said it was set in the 70s, I'm like, oh, narratively, it's probably the snake eating its tail. There's going to be something that aligns with that original Raimi film. If I had, I'm not a rocket scientist here. If I had to guess, look.
So I'm hoping it's good, but the newer Evil Dead films, I didn't really have there wasn't anything in there that I'm like, this really interests me.
My take is very simple with the new Resident Evil. Constantine knows how profitable that franchise is to them, and they probably just said, Kreger, give us a good movie so that at least set us up, make a good movie. We're going to pay you a shit ton of money so that we can make 10 bad sequels. That's how it always goes in, just set it up so that we can make 10 more of these. Because I hate to be shrewd, I hate to be cynical, but that's the world we live in. It's, it's an intellectual property, right? What does it matter? So with that being said, it is one of my favorite times of the show where we, what I like to call plug talk, where you just, anything you want to plug, we know we have to give money to Garf. I want to give money to Garf. I feel guilty. So please, folks, donate to Garf. It goes to a great cause. But please plug away, sir.
The first thing that I would probably plug is the crowdfund for our Resident Evil fan film. It's on Indiegogo. I'm sure I can give you the link to it, but you can go to Indiegogo. It's called Original Sin, Prelude to Biohazard. And it's running, as of this recording, it's running for another 6 days or so.
Jesus. But
we will continue. We did a 60-day campaign and got $117,000 so far.
Wow.
We will continue letting the crowdfund go because we want to make sure that by the time we go film, we have as much money as we can. But we are doing Blu-rays. We're doing VHS We are going to have VHS copies available. You can buy them directly. We have posters. We have signed autographs. We have like some of the extra rolls. So if, a lot of the money, personally, and this is just my personal take, that I always hate the idea of like selling parts for a movie, because that's like a common thing with crowdfund. But I'm like, at the end of the day, we're trying to make a fucking movie. And so like we sell off, like, be a zombie in the film or be like an RPD cop. And, that helps go towards like, your hotel costs and things like that, where we're just trying to make the damn movie. But we have stretch goals. Like, for example, some of the original game actors actually want to come back as new characters. They want to be cops and other different characters and just be on set because they love Resident Evil that much. And we have it's just like an all-star like team of people from, we have George Demick producing, and he was George Romero's apprentice. So we have someone who works with George Romero helping us and to get this across the finish line. We have people from the documentary. We have people from the Resident Evil community. So I got to plug that because it's an amazing team. It's not just the fact that I'm writing and directing. We have this amazing team of fans that just want to go do something and be like, Zach Krieger has his film. Now we're going to just go make something for the fans without a care for making $100 million. We just want to go make something fun to celebrate 30 years of Resident Evil. Obviously, George A. Romero Foundation, keep their support. And then Residents of Evil, YouTube channel, Residents of Evil, and Biohazard Declassified, both YouTube channels that cover Resident Evil and survival horror. They are some of the people pushing this Original Sin fan film, and great friends. And sometimes I'm on their channels doing stuff with them, but very, very close friends. And check out Whistle to the Maples. It's on Amazon Prime. Obviously, my documentary, George A. Romero's Resident Evil. It's, I think, just about everywhere. Vinegar Syndrome has a physical release of it. I had to buy my own special edition version. They didn't give me anything for free. So those were sold out in I think they were sold out in 3 hours. I barely got a copy. So, but they have the regular version. The only thing different is this one has a slipcase with all new cover art. And, yeah, I'll probably think of 9 other things after the fact. But the other thing, too, is Living Dead Museum. If you can get to the Monroeville Mall, the Monroeville Mall got bought up by Walmart. They plan to demolish it next year. The Living Dead Museum is still there in the mall. And I ask anyone who has ever wanted to visit that mall, go there now. Don't wait. Go there now. Go to Living Dead Weekend in October. Go to the museum. Go see George's bust that they have in the mall. Just go. You're losing mall culture. You're losing film history. You're losing one of the locations from Dawn of the Dead, the most iconic location probably from all of George's films. Just go there. Be with like-minded horror fans and George Romero fans in October when they have Living Dead Weekend, and go visit the museum. It's absolutely fucking amazing. Go to the university, go to the Romero archives where you can read his work. And yeah, that's, I think that's everything.
Brandon Salisbury, thank you for coming on to The Offering. I can't say it enough. I mean, my head is full of information, good stuff, good things to come. I wish you nothing but blessings in the future. You did it. I mean, shit. I'm loving what you're doing, and I'm very happy for you, and I'm grateful you're here and your continued success. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end, ladies and gentlemen. This has been The Offering with me, your host, Jerry Horror. Mostly horror, always genre.
This has been a Sick Boy Wolfgang production. Thank you for listening.
If it's not too much, would you be able to I really wanted to see a close-up of that Fangoria Chainsaw Award.
Oh, yeah.
Can we get Best Podcast for that award?
Whoa, that's sick. That's a gorgeous looking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's dope.
It's heavy. So a couple cool things, because I am a George Romero fan. That is a Tyrant maquette that was made by John Wrightson, and it's based on his father, Bernie Wrightson's concept art of the Tyrant for the film that you've seen in the doc. This should be interesting. So the special effects artist that I interviewed, Mike McGee, all the pieces that he had in the documentary that he showed off, I ended up buying all that shit. I donated stuff to the university. I donated stuff to the Living Dead Museum. This one here is what is on the Japanese Resident Evil 2 cover. For Resident Evil 2. I don't think I have it here, but you can look it up. You search like Biohazard 2 cover, and you should see it. And it's that's the cover. And it was designed by Screaming Mad George for George Romero's commercial of the live action Resident Evil 2 commercial. So I have a bunch of different pieces